The title is misleading, but it is effective. The way I stumbled upon this book was after a constellation session about money for me, where the concept of self-worth just kept coming up. And after the session, I was just like, what is self-worth? How do you quantify that? Give me something tangible about this. I don't know what to do with this. I don't feel what self-worth is. So I went on my audiobook app and I just typed in worth. Not even self-worth, just worth. I'm like, what's coming up? And this book showed up called Machiavelli For Women. Oh, the title immediately, I'm like, is this gonna be one of those how to be a sociopath, just be more like a man type of neo-feminist bullshit for women? The fact that it has for women in the title, I'm like, oh, fuck you. It's like quantum physics for dummies, empire building for self-starters. Fuck you. And for some reason, I still clicked on it and I listened to it. It's like a 4 or 5 hour listen. It's a very easy book. But usually what I would do is summarize a book and tell you that it's not worth reading or it's not worth listening to. There are a couple of good things in it that you can pick out, and I'm going to summarize it for you. This time, like, you know what? I actually listened to this book. I quite like it. It didn't quite stick the landing for me. The second half is a bit too formulaic and cliche. Like, I almost feel like the writer, and I don't remember her name, honest to God. The second part of the book, it feels like she's abandoning her own logic from the beginning of the book. But the first half is so solid and dense in information that I genuinely cannot sum it up. So I'm just gonna pick out one aspect of it that still sticks with me the most. But the book itself is quite a nuanced book, and it picks Machiavelli's actual book called The Prince. So it's not about a Machiavellian personality. She kind of goes against that stereotype. And you actually find out that Machiavelli wasn't such a douchebag. He just got a very bad rap. Or in that specific book, I'm pretty sure that for the first part of his life when he was leading armies, that's when he was a dickhead. But then the second part of his life, when he actually wrote the book that made him famous for the rest of history, Machiavelli himself was in a position where he was the underdog, and he was quite resentful about his own situation, but he very much understood that his days are over. And he wrote his book, The Prince, to the Prince of Florence, one of the Medicis, and as a cautionary tale that if you're a dick, you're not going to be successful, and if you're wishy-washy, you're not going to be successful. So it's actually not a sociopathic, just plow through everyone book, but it is coming from that macho sense of, I was up there, I was like you, you're gonna be the next one, let's see what you got. And the woman who brings in examples from Machiavelli's book, actually it's a very loose, like I'm pretty sure that she read that book a million times and it influenced her, but she's very loosely referencing Machiavelli's actual book. And she touches upon just different aspects of women at work that I have never really thought about. She's more of an office type girl, it feels like. I think that's what she's done all her life, corporate jobs. So a lot of what she's saying just simply does not apply to someone who's freelancing. So I had to do a lot of my translation. It's like, how does that work for me, for my situation? But the concepts that she's digging into are actually shifting something in my mind. I have criticized neo-feminism often enough, and I don't like to call myself a feminist at all. I hugely believe in equal differences. We are different, but we are equal. I just don't like what the big movement is doing to it. And her book is actually quite nuanced. Her tips at the second part of the book are not so nuanced. And I have to admit that I personally very much disagree with what she says about motherhood, because she herself is a very career-driven woman. And she talks about other very career-focused women. And I personally grew up as a child of neglectful parents. So I think that everything that she says about how mothers should conduct themselves in the workplace and how mothers should, or what could mothers do to counteract the bias and the discrimination against mothers in the workplace, which the information bits of it are very useful, but her actual tips to do, I personally disagree with, because I believe that it might be very successful for the woman who wants to achieve a certain position or a certain job, or want to maintain or want to return to a certain position. But I believe that for the child of that woman, she is actually causing huge psychological issues that will remain with that child for the rest of their lives and will cause them a lot of harm and damage that they will have to repair later on in life. So that's the part of the book that I categorically disagree with. Her tips are not necessarily the tips that I would follow, but the ideology that she opened my mind up to is brilliant. She talks about not just the gender pay gap and gender bias, but the outright discrimination against women in ways that are not necessarily always malicious. Sometimes it's just patronizing. Sometimes it's coming from a lack of awareness, a lack of knowledge, a lack of experience, a lack of worldliness, small-mindedness. But she also talks about the unconscious bias parts where culturally, genealogically, is that a word? We are ingrained, both males and females, we are ingrained with the unconscious bias against women that is holding us back, both as males to repair the systemic damage that was turned against women, that was committed against women, and we fail to produce systems or provide systems that are equally treating males and females. I have a friend I fucking loved when she said that we have heads of departments. She, in her quite corporate job, would like to be a heart of department. Like, oh, that sounds good. And I know that it's going to get shut down. I know that in a male-dominated environment, this is going to be thought of as something wishy-washy, something that is not professional enough. But I'm like, why is that? Why don't we have workplaces? Why don't we have job titles that are incorporating femininity instead of just the female gender? I miss femininity from feminism and from work life in general. There are hardly ever leadership positions. And again, it was the same friend when we talked about it, that it would be the ideal situation where leader as the title would be a dual person title. It will have to be a gender pair. One will have to be a man and one will have to be a woman. We can take that gender issue into a much more nuanced conversation, but let me simplify this. So that they are a pair, they are a couple. They might not have anything to do, preferably they don't have anything to do with each other in their personal lives, but professionally the title of leader should involve more than one person. So there's always a dialogue between those two people. We would have more inclusive and constructive structures and organizations if we were to have a leader as more than one person. So the idea that really stuck with me from this book was that females, women, for many reasons, don't dare to ask for a higher salary. They don't dare to negotiate for a higher salary. And she lists multiple brilliant reasons. And the solutions that she offers for it are something that I would slightly like to tweak because I was not happy with them. She offers something called Ask Like a Woman. Now, even with her title, I have the unconscious bias. When I heard for women, I'm like, this is gonna be for dummies, starters. That's my unconscious bias that I associate with even the word women. The female form, just because we look the way we look, doesn't matter how educated we are, how skilled, how professional, how well put together, how smart, how well presented we are. Just because of the way we look, we are getting discriminated against even by our own gender. We have such a historical, systemic, DNA level inbuilt disadvantage that it takes work. It takes practice to rebuild our self-worth, our self-confidence, our trust and ability to respect ourselves, and the ability to command that respect from others as well, especially in the workplace, especially when it comes to asking for the price that we are worth. And it's a brilliant reframe for my mind that women are very often are just more grateful for the opportunity to work, or they are thinking about the needs that they have. And if the money is covering their needs, they are happy, or at least they are content. While men are looking at a more global market level, where does my job title sit within the market, so that they would negotiate from that perspective. Am I measuring up to other people, potentially globally? And am I, compared to them, getting a fair compensation? And women are looking at more locally. Is this beneficial for the company? Can they afford it? Am I asking for too much? Am I being a nuisance? Am I worth that much? Is what I'm offering on equal par with what I'm getting back? There is something about the female psyche that has been damaged to the point when we don't trust ourselves. And we believe that we have to be more masculine when we're asking for a pay rise. But it's actually documented that it doesn't work for women. She brings up such brilliant examples how women and men are measured against each other in blind studies with the same CV, just a different name, with the same email, just a different name. And if it's a male, if it's a female, the same content is judged completely differently just because it's a different gender that is supposedly having those attributes. So when we are trying to present ourselves as more masculine, more assertive, more authoritative, traits that are working for males, we are actually being judged even more harshly because we're thought of as bitches, as just unfriendly to work with. Instead of that, if we incorporate our femininity with skill and talent and professionalism, with kindness and generosity, that is what is advancing us in the workplace as females, as women, but also as feminine beings. Because we cannot deny that at our very core, that is why we are softer. It is in our nature. And we have to learn how to turn our very nature into our advantage.